Hi, this is Jason with Green Star Productions. Thanks for clicking on my video to watch. On this one, you're going to watch me make a desk out of 3 pallets and some scrap wood. Scrap wood logs that I had left over from a home renovation project, and I'm going to make a desk out of it. What you see here is my little display of what happened after I took apart the pallets. As you see, one of the support rails split, and there's a whole cup full of nails and all the tools that I had pulled out of the pallet to use it. This is before I started using a sawzall to just saw the boards off. So here I've taken one of the support beams from the pallet, and I'm just going to cut those to a length to make legs. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to put 2 of these splines back to back. As you see here, this one's just been propped up in this vise, just so I had a nice sanding surface, because my regular workbench wasn't quite sturdy enough for this. So my plan is, and eventually turned out to be, I put the non-cutout sides of these together. Yep, as you see right here. And then I resin them together with a silver tinted resin to get my legs. I just wanted to show that I still wanted some kind of visual reminder that these had been beaten up and used boards. So here I am checking them for level. I've screwed them together, as you see. And this was my first major resin project, so I was really making this up as I go along. What you see here is they're sitting on freezer paper, so that I can fold up the sides and make a real simple little mold for the resin casting. But first, what I need to do is I'm going to seal them so that I sealed them up so that I didn't waste a whole bunch of resin just to have it soak into the wood. And here you see I've tried to plan ahead so that I didn't have everything just run out, so I just put a piece of duct tape across the back. And you can see the gap in between that particular set of legs. So here you go. Here I changed my mind on what I was going to do for the resin mold, so I just made it out of duct tape. Figuring, alright, hey, this will peel right off and it doesn't stick to resin. And I got a nice form-fitting mold. As you'll see, I started to have a slight problem with some leakage, so I had to jury rig a fix with some more duct tape, which, as everybody with a sense of humor knows, holds the universe together. And here we see the second coat. And what I started to say was, I'm still really pleased with how this project turned out at the end, no matter the flubs and mess ups you'll see as I continue to go through the production process here. They came up with a lot of character, and in fact that's what my microphone is sitting on at the moment, is this desk. And here you see this is one of the rounded boards from my home construction project. So all I've done here is I'd filed off the mortise side, the side that sticks out, and the tenon side, the other side, I've just put some blue tinted resin in because I just wanted to get a nice solid surface. And here you see, I've got the legs set up so that I can do some final shaping, and you're seeing my shop assistant Brogan making sure to chase off any and all distractions that pass along the street. Now this is actually a couple of days afterward, because I ended up having to do 3 or 4 pours with the resin just because I kept not being quite satisfied with how it came out. So I just kept pouring resin until I got the result I wanted. As you see, there's a part of the duct tape that had gotten stuck between the layers of the pour, so it was pretty much impossible to get off by hand. So I just figured, all right, I've got to sand it down anyway. So as you see, I just took it outside, set it up on the sawhorses, and whip out the old giant power sander and go to town. And I know, if you're talking about fine carpentry, of course, you'd want a desk made out of hardwood, but not wanting to spend a lot of money on materials for the desk and not having, frankly, not having the tools and the space to process it correctly, to turn my own legs and what have you. And not to mention the fact that resin is going to make any wood that it's on is going to just be much, much, much sturdier than it was before. So I stuck with the pine and the oak that you get most pallets made out of. It was when I was editing all of this together, and I realized just how boring it is watching somebody sand something time and time again. It's kind of why I eventually changed my video format. So I've cut out. If you watch any of my other videos, you'll notice that I don't spend a lot of time sanding, or at the very least, I fast forward through a lot of it. I set the replay speed a lot higher. And frankly, for a guy that's doing this, freehanded, just sitting them on sawhorses like this, I don't think I did a bad job. Again, this was one of the first big projects like this I'd done, and I'm real happy with the result. It came out absolutely gorgeous. And again, here my basic idea is I'm just getting all the surfaces flat and all of that, since I've, for lack of a better term, I've built up the wood with the resin. So this is just me shaping it out. We're just a real low grit sandpaper. This is I think this was an 80 grit pad I was using at this point. Just so I can try to get as much of the resin and any wood splinters and all filed down as best I can. And I know, and word to the wise, anybody that's looking to try a project with it, definitely wear a mask, wear a respirator. Sure, I am working outside on this one, but still, sawdust and resin dust are both, they're not exactly toxic, but they're not great to just have stuck in your lungs. So please don't do what I did here. Wear a mask. Again, just sand, sand, sand. And the further I got into this, I have to say, the more I realized, I'm going to do what a regular carpenter would do at this point and go, you know what, let's round down these corners and sides, because not just for touch, but visually, rounded lines are they're softer and a little easier for your eye to slide right across. At this point, I realized I'm standing directly in the sun. I'm just cooking. So, as you see, I turn the camera a bit, move the sawhorses into the shade, and pick up right where I left off, because I was just cooking at this point. Didn't figure it was going to take me real long, but I shot this video back in June or July, and this was just murderous. Just right out in the bright summer sun like that. Now, one of the problems I will admit to having with my setup is that I've only got one power cord wired in, so if I'm using a power tool, I've got to change some of them out, and I've got to move things around, make sure that I stage my equipment, not my equipment, stage my workpieces right where within range of me pulling the extension cord over. It's one of those things I'd like to eventually build an actual workshop so that I'm not, you know, always doing this out in the yard, and whether fair and foul. And if you'd like to help with that, self plug here, you can follow the links in the video's description, and you can follow me on Subscribestar. You can, just for a couple of bucks a month, you can help support me doing some of these projects. And now I'll admit the Subscribestar campaign is a little bare bones at this point because I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to work this. So, but if you can spare a couple of bucks a month to help a new beginning crazy YouTuber do something fun, and to get a chance, if you have an idea that's something that you'd like to see a complete whack job try, definitely join at the $5 level, because that's when I start taking your suggestions seriously. Now, I obviously won't be able to do everything. Of course, I'll review these and I'll go, all right, hey, I could do this. And if I can't, I will say, sorry, great suggestion, but I just don't have the space or the materials or whatever. And the more hint, hint, the more subscribers I get, the less likely I'll be able to say, hey, I'd love to do this project, but I can't afford the materials for it. So tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell anybody you know that might be interested in this. All right, self-plug over. But I figure it's got to be more interesting than just listening to me gas on and on about how much I, like a lot of other people doing carpentry, just hate sanding, because it feels like you just spending hours and hours doing this, and it's not much fun. We'd all rather be doing something else, something much more interesting. And as you see here, I don't have any. I don't have clamps or a real proper workbench, so I'm having to deal with the leg here just bouncing back and forth in the slot on my sawhorses. But I'm not, since I wasn't exactly going for fractions of an inch tolerance, it was doable. And again, this was just this started off as an experiment, and well, frankly, I'm stubborn. And I really wish I'd realized when I was taping this that the way I'd had the camera set up, y'all are just staring at my back during this whole thing, and the only way you'll see the piece is when I move to the side. Well, we live and we learn. But like I said, this is one of the earlier videos I shot. And as I get further and further into this, the more I realize, okay, well, I've gotten a lot of the bulk shaping done, but I really can't. That sander that I was using is just a little too much trying to get into the corners of the cutouts on these legs. So what I end up doing, as you'll see here in a minute, I bust out with the old Dremel and a grinding stone, and I just get the last bits of the resin that are too much to, too small for the power sander here to get. But first, what I do is I pulled the table vise on a stand. I put that in the shade too, just so I could get a nice, as level as I could get without using a lot of tools or getting too wound up about it. I did want to get it level, but I wasn't going to get so completely wrapped around it that I let it end the day, because I wanted to get the project done. So really, yeah, I should have used a level and a planer, but I don't have a planer, and trying to dig out, I was just so hyped to get the desk done that I just wanted to get these legs done as quick as I could, and so I could move on to getting the desk top done. And again, given that these planks were already shaped once, even if it wasn't great wood, they were already fairly straight. So it's not like I was carving these out of a piece of raw wood. And once again, the safety concern here: please, if you're gonna do this, wear a mask, wear a respirator. I mean, probably a little less of a concern since I was outside, but again, sawdust and resin dust are not your friends. And that was one of the biggest things I learned with this project, like wear a mask, at least a dust mask, if not a full-on respirator. Anything to just keep the dust out of your lungs and eyes and all of that. Well, not so much the eyes, but at least out of your lungs. Boy, I wish I'd kept the raw videos for this. Now you see me use my all-time favorite chop tool, one that I wish I'd bought years ago when doing other projects. But ye old compressor with an air hose. It just for cleanup, nothing beats it. And you can see my dog is just he loves. I can't tell if he loves the air hose or he hates it, but he is constantly trying to eat it every time I pull the trigger. He's going after it. So I end up spraying him in the face a couple of times. And frankly, I'm trying to keep him, figure if I can try to drive him off a little, I can blow the rest of this dust out without it getting too bad. Because I don't want to clog up his lungs either. There you go. There we go. Now you can really see that the silver does pop quite a bit against the wood. And here's where I pull out the Dremel, because I just I wasn't happy with the way with the few little bits of resin that were in this curve. But if you look at the topmost right hand curve, if you look at the wood, most of that little curve there is resin, because this piece had broken off of the support when it was still a skid, and of course that's not going to work. Whoop. There we go. Realign the camera angle. Now you'll see here, and again, because of that space constraint, I ended up right here with the old Dremel and just beat that into shape. That only took me a minute or so to do. And again, I wasn't too worried about this because I put another. My plan was to put another coat of resin on this. Turns out that's not what I was going to do, but I was not real concerned with getting this in absolutely dead level smooth and perfect. I just wanted to eliminate some of the irregularities from where it had been, from where the resin had rested against my duct tape mold. And I just, while I was at it, I just cleaned up the edges here. And if you've made it this far into the video, I'd like to thank you for putting up with my just gassing on and making you watch me sand things down. There is a part 2 of this video that will be coming out in very short order, if not the exact same day as this video goes up. But in part 2, I'm going to be focusing more on the desk top itself and not the legs here. I had enough footage spliced together that I decided to do it in 2 parts rather than just the one, because this video is already 20 minutes long, and even I will admit it's a little a little dull. It's not the greatest video I've ever done, and I was still experimenting with camera angles and all at this point. So please stay tuned and watch that second part of the video, because I promise it's a lot more fun and a lot more visually interesting in that second part. But if you have any interest in woodworking at all, I mean, hey, you see, this is how some people make, legs for their furniture or something decorative. And maybe it gives you an idea of something you want to do with pallet wood. I hope so. Or at the very least, it amused you long enough to get to the end of this. And here I am again, this is on the other pallet leg. I just making sure I get all of these nice and clean. And all I ended up doing with the legs was, instead, I thought about doing a final clear coat of resin on it, but I changed my mind and just decided to go with a spray lacquer instead, because the point of this wasn't to have a real clear resin. It was just to have a somewhat visually interesting leg. So I just cleaned up all of these, made sure that the resin was relatively smooth and not jagged, in case me or the dog rubbed up against it at some point and didn't want to catch a splinter or anything. So I just patched it together as best I could with the Dremel, got it down as much as I could, and tried to square it off between the Dremel and the sander, and ended up with a satisfactory result. And then I just hit it again with that spray lacquer at the end, which I didn't film, but that's how the legs ended up. And I'd like to thank everybody for watching.